We're back on the Performance Matters podcast. Just a note to anyone listening or even watching, we are on both Spotify and YouTube. So make sure you guys subscribe to both those channels so you guys can always get the latest updates and, of course, episodes. So we're back, myself and Coach Miles, and we're chopping up once again. So busy morning. We had our teams coming in for assessment day right before we hit into the postseason. How'd that go?
Overall, I thought it went really well. I think it's another good testament to the work the athletes have been putting in, and I think it kind of disproves, the misconception. A lot of people think that it's in season. Yeah, we're going to train, but all the metrics are just going to get worse. We're going to go down. Let's just try to mitigate risk, and or mitigate loss, I guess. And it's awesome to see a lot of athletes who've been really putting in the most work and have the best attitude. Not only maintaining, but hitting PRs, all-time, lifetime PRs.
Huge. Yeah, absolutely.
Right? We have obviously data tracked on these athletes from years now, and seeing some of them really peaking at the end of their careers, despite playing a ton of minutes, a ton of sets, whatever it may be. I think that was just another testament to both the hard work that they've been putting in, and again, just that concept that a lot of time is misunderstood. People are like,
Yeah.
I gotta just rest all the time during season because I have to save it for the game day. Well-intentioned, but obviously we're proving over and over again that's not the best way to do it, right? We have the same intention of wanting to perform the best on game day. Our approach to get there is maybe a little bit different than people often assume. So
Huge. You can see it sometimes too. This time of year, especially as we, a couple weeks out from playoffs at most for some of our teams right now, you can see that stress. You can see it. And it's how do you kind of not only keep morale up, right? Again, they look forward to the end of the year and, essentially we're getting ready to lay it on the line. But man, sometimes it's fucking hard just to separate how you're feeling from what you're capable of doing.
right.
You know what I mean? And then just looking at some of the numbers from today, it was great to see those who have really bought into that process, which that's our responsibility, is like help them learn to love this process.
Right.
Right. Maybe some people have come from like a negative connotation with training and they feel beat up, but there's so many tools in our toolbox we can use to, all right, you don't want a back squat. Okay, that's fine. Like here's a front squat, here's this, here's a rear foot, whatever. Like there's so many tools we can use to help them find something that they're comfortable doing and still get the result. But
It's just conventional wisdom too, right? Like naturally people think I have a game on Saturday, I need to rest all week so I'm not sore for that day. And we're like, I understand why you would think that, yes, but
Yeah,
there's still
common.
things we can do where you're not sore. You're actually going to be maintaining, or like I said, even improving on a lot of the metrics that you care about, both now and more importantly by the end of the season, right? So it's like, hey, it's meeting them where they're at. Like you said, it's educating them. It's like, yes, I understand what your potential fears may be around that and thinking, hey, like the last thing I want to do is Saturday and warm it up and my legs are sore because I squatted on Tuesday or whatever it may be. And it's like, hey, totally understand where you're coming from, but actually we're going to do it in these ranges, these volumes, these intensities, whatever it may be, this frequency, this volume. And actually you're going to be better on Saturday than you would have been without that. And over time, you're going to be able to, like I said, keep those metrics where you want them to be or even improve on them.
yeah, looking at just the numbers from, let's say, the fall Christmas break to right before we enter the postseason, we're seeing we've just looking at them. I've seen a trend where the people that are doing the things, right, and these are ones that have great attitudes and everything else. It's crazy how even since usually we're at our best point right before season hits, but a lot of these numbers would dictate that we were. Even now, it's cool to see that they're still capable of making some vast improvements in season. Even with that higher practice demand and everything else going on, the ones that want it, that get it, they're doing the things and they're getting the results. The metrics are showing that they're more physically capable to do the things they have to do at a higher level repeatedly, which I think doesn't get acknowledged enough. It's not just doing it one time. It's can you do it at a higher level repeatedly from set one to set whatever, from minute one to the end of the buzzer, right? So it's really trying to distinguish like sensation versus stimulation. How you feel is not always going to be an indicator of your capability to perform, right? Like you've seen in yourself too. You've seen athletes come through that might feel a certain way, and all of a sudden you put them on the force plates, or you put them on VBT, or you test their whatever, and they're actually hitting pretty decent numbers, if not some exceeding the numbers they've had previously. So it's kind of like oh fucking shit, yes, you're very capable. It's not always just falling victim to I feel this, I can't do that. That's never always the case.
Right. It's an education piece too. Again, with everybody's heard the term, if you don't use it, you lose it. Right? And we've talked about this at length in the past. The problem is you lose it or you lose these qualities at different rates too. So it's educating these kids on something like speed that's very sensitive to the central nervous system. It's like, we know this. If you don't train it once, honestly, even twice a week, you're going to get slower, right? Whether you like it or not, that's just a physiological reality. Strength, too, is pretty sensitive, obviously, to the CNS as well. So being able to hit these things frequently enough in appropriate dosages, obviously, is going to be crucial in maintaining these metrics and obviously improving them. And this is partially why it's so imperative to train so hard in the off season, right? We've said this a lot of time too. The kids that come in here 4 or 5 times per week in the off season build up such a crazy work capacity that like now you ask them to do 2 days a week of training in season, and it feels like a walk in the park.
Huge. It's
versus
capacity.
Right, kids who barely train twice a week all off season. Where do you go from there? Down to one. One is already not even enough, as we just mentioned, with something like speed, right? Even strength is very sensitive. So now you're only going down to once a week. It's like that's not even enough to really do anything. But because you're only doing 2 in the off season, that 2 still feels really hard. I'm still at my 100% volume capacity. So it's like if you can push those reserves, I guess we can call them, super high in the off season, you've built such a capacity that something less than that feels really easy.
Yeah,
right?
It's tolerance.
Yeah, versus the next guy, it's like they want us to train 2 times a week in season. Oh my god! Whereas like our kids would be like 2 times a season. That's like a cup of coffee. It's nothing. Right?
Yeah,
like 2 times a week. I mean, it's like
it's
baby
all
food,
relative.
Right? Like
it's all relative. It's like we try to use the analogy almost. It's like if you have a 95% average in school, to get to 97% is fucking hard because you got to get 96 is nice. Yeah, it's fucking hard to get that 96% average. But if you're coming in at like 60%, fuck man, you sign your name on the exam, you'll get 65% or 70.
Right. Exactly.
So it's like if you have that tolerance built up already, it's necessary to kind of keep that same threshold. You have to walk that line pretty regularly to actually maintain, if not improve, your capability to actually express those training qualities. And I think looking at just as an example, this assessment we did this morning and then comparing them to the fall, the ones that I've seen, and the numbers would back this up, the ones that have been consistent all season that had a pretty high training tolerance and training age and doing the things that
who are here in the summer consistently, or if they're from another region, they were training hard in the summer.
Yeah, you can tell. The numbers don't lie. And again, we try to keep these numbers as relevant to, the sport demands as possible. So looking at the numbers that we have currently, seeing the ones that have done the right things, and not only just checking the box, but the intent.
Right.
It's not just what they're doing; it's how they're doing it, which I think
squeeze everything out of every single
rep.
Yeah,
it's like every rep matters to them, and it doesn't matter how they're feeling; they're able to just put on the line and do the best they can with what they have for that day. Those things matter, and it's showing that those ones are making the improvements from beginning of season to now. As where in most instances you just be happy holding on to what you have,
right?
And then you're seeing
that would be a win in itself.
That'd be a fucking win on its own,
right?
So now you're looking at some of the other examples. You're like, okay, from fall till now, we've seen some steadily decline. So then you have to ask the questions like, okay, these are just 3 moments in time, 3 touch points across the season. What the fuck happened? Why? Let's dig deeper. Some assumptions could even be made like, are you checking the box at the very least? Are you just doing what we've planned the work? Are you just working the plan? Or are you just checking the box? And if you're not, okay, then maybe we're not spinning the plates. We're not hitting the qualities that are needed to maintain. Yeah. Now that doesn't mean you can't express the skill that you're good at on the court or on the field.
Right.
It's just from the numbers. If I'm looking from September to now, and I've seen a pretty big drop in a couple. So asking that question is like, okay, assuming they're not doing the right things, assuming they're not following the plan, assuming they're kind of falling victim, I will say, to how they feel, a sensation.
Right.
It's not that they can't play the game or do the sport very well. My I guess conclusion would be, it's like, based on what I'm seeing, you're on a steady, like, it's almost like a time sensitive factor. It's like, yes, you're doing the things, but for how long are you able to continue doing this thing? At some point, it's almost like you're a ticking time bomb. There's going to be a time where I see you're holding on for dear life, but you're also a little more beat up. And these are subjective feedback too, like they're feeling beat up or they're feeling tired, they're falling victim to those things, which those things happen, but it's impacting them now. So it's like, yes, you're able to do these things, but for how long? How long can you keep this up before you're no longer able to express the skills at a high level anymore?
Right.
Your capacity essentially is dwindling. You're able to do the thing, but it's a question of how much longer can you do the thing as you're continually declining physically. So you're essentially, what the numbers are saying is like, there is a limit now and your body's kind of giving out things, or you're having to compensate more.
Yeah.
to keep doing the same thing, and that's now taking a toll.
Right.
And the numbers are reflecting that. So the flags are fucking flying up.
Right.
But it's like, how do you now have that conversation and be like, listen, I know how you're feeling, but we can't keep delaying this. Like, there has to be a point where, okay, we're telling you to sprint once a week. Why? Here's why. But you haven't sprint at a high enough capacity or high enough threshold.
Did you sprint like your life depended on it down that turf,
Yeah.
or were you running? Or were you moving at a fast-paced walk, right?
Yeah, exactly.
I ran. You saw me moving.
Yeah.
You can only lie to yourself. You know what I mean? Were you sprinting?
Mm-hmm.
Like your hair's on fire, like you know what I mean? Or were you like, I was moving really fast. You see me moving? It's not the same thing.
They're not the same thing.
Right? And like to your point too, I had a discussion with a kid a few years back, and it was like, I'm a baseball pitcher. I said, okay, cool. Have you ever heard of the 90-mile-an-hour formula, right? Dr. Heenan, he has this pretty consistent formula based on your height. You need to weigh this much. You need to reverse lunge this much. You need to do this many chin-ups with this much weight. There's this whole formula. And the athlete was like, well, I can't hit those metrics, but I can already throw 90, so what does it matter? And I said, totally fair. I said, you're obviously really good at throwing that baseball, but you probably only have so many of those left in you because you're not hitting those. You're trying to shoot a cannon from a canoe, right? We've used that analogy 100 times from Coach Poliquin's quote, obviously. That's amazing you can do that. How many times can you do that, though? And like this is like a high school kid. I'm like, you probably want to have a whole collegiate career and then hopefully some type of pro opportunity after that. Your body is probably not going to hold up through that because you're not hitting some of these metrics that some guy way smarter than me has established with all these pro pitchers, right? Success leaves clues, as we say every time. So it's like, hey, everybody that can hit these metrics throws 90. You already throw 90, but you don't hit these metrics? We're going to have to like reverse engineer it almost to say, hey, if you can't hit these metrics, you're only going to throw 90 so many times. That arm or that back, that elbow, that shoulder is like a ticking time bomb because you don't have the requisite skills to do that over and over and over again. Or you have the skills, I guess, but you don't have the capacity, right?
It all comes back to that. It's not a matter of if, it's when. It's like you're doing it now,
right?
But for how long can you keep doing the thing? And then, when push comes to shove, you play at a higher level. You're doing the same things faster against better people.
Yeah.
How long do you have until you start to compensate to a point where now it's impacting your ability to hit the same speeds, if not higher speeds?
Right. There's a reason why that's like a coveted number. I want to throw 90. Or like some of these pros, like, I want to throw 100. Because it's very hard and a very small percentage of the population can do it. And because that fact is true, it's obviously very hard on the body. So if you haven't built up a body that can withstand those forces repeatably, like you said, it's not if, it's when. It's a ticking time bomb, right?
Yeah, it's crazy. It's almost like a Moneyball scenario. Like you're literally just following the numbers. And again, it goes back to what I said before. It's never a point of like these things might not impact your ability to necessarily play on the court or play on the field or play on the pitch. It's just we're seeing things that might dictate there's going to be a means to an end here at some point, and we just don't know. We see that coming up sooner rather than later. It's like you're lucky the season's coming to an end, but then this should be a big wake-up call. Like we need to put in to build some more capacity. It comes back to just physical capability. You know what I mean? If nothing else, yes, we can make you run faster, jump higher, but it really comes down to, can you express your sports skill? Like you're trying to achieve an objective. You have a certain skill set to do a task. Can you do the task repeatedly?
Right.
Not just one time, not just one sprint, not just one jump, not just one throw, whatever. It's, can you keep doing the thing before we see a steady decline? And then how long does that have? Do you have a whole season in you?
Right.
You know what I mean? So
hopefully a career, or you're gonna you're gonna get to that point where you're about to make a lot of money, life-changing amounts of money, to be able to throw that ball or whatever that sport may be, shoot that puck, whatever. And that's when your body's gonna fall apart on you and fail you because you haven't put in, the requisite work leading up to that point, and that's just an absolute tragedy, right?
It's huge. It's
like absolute tragedy. Like,
give him millions of dollars just because like you fucking off by like 2 miles an hour on a fucking fastball because your fucking arm gave out. You're just like, holy fucking shit, man. It's again, we know more about sports science now than we ever have in the last 5-10 years, and yet we've seen the highest injury rates of non-contact injuries. Upwards of 70% of injuries are non-contact now.
Right.
Higher injury rates, but yet more knowledge in sports science. It's almost like we've become so too specific.
Right.
It's literally become too fucking specific. Our kids, our athletes are doing more of the same thing over and over again. They're doing more practices, more games, more combines.
Right.
So it's just this level of they're expressing the skills they already have versus building capability to then raise the ceiling to pull the floor with them. They're just hitting the same thing. It's like water on a fucking rock. They're just eroding away bit by bit by bit. At some point, the rock's gonna crack and you got gravel.
Right.
So it's like how do you kind of educate them on these things and say, well, these are the things we're doing. It's not just expression.
Right.
We got to build some robustness here. We got to build some capability so you can then express your skills for a higher duration of time, essentially. Like you can do the things over and over again. And we see all the time with sport practices and subjective feedback, and then now the numbers. Like the numbers aren't lying. It's just, again, it's a moment in time, but we track some of these things for our teams, a couple times for the season, but also with our other athletes, like sometimes 3 or 4 times a week.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it comes down to this. I hate this fucking word, load management.
Right.
Like, what the fuck does that mean? What is load management? What is injury prevention, essentially? What the fuck is that?
It's funny too, because for me it's like, I think there's a common misconception first and foremost that people that we just want athletes to live in the weight room or live under the bar or live, that's not the case. We're just trying to help them, like I said, build a body that is capable not only to perform optimally, but to perform for a long period of time, right? Not only optimally, I guess, but sustainably.
Yeah, sustainability.
Right? So this is why I like this analogy. Super easy. There's just 2 aspects of it. I'll tell kids straight up, I'm like, we're helping you build a car. Your coach is going to teach you how to drive it. Your coach and the skill work you're doing and whoever, is going to teach you how to drive it. So I used to bust Donison all the time. I would say, Donison, I love the weight room. I've lived in the weight room like my whole life. There's a point, I love football, obviously. That was my whole life at a certain point. And it got to a point where honestly I love the weight room more than I love football. And that's when I kind of knew that's going to be my career. But my point is, I was like, Matthew, I could out squat, out bench, out whatever you by a mile. And you can throw that ball like 95 miles an hour. You want to watch me throw a baseball? Go ahead and laugh. I'll laugh myself. I probably can't throw that thing 50 miles an hour because I don't know what the hell I'm doing. Right? So that's the driving the car versus building up the car. So I would tell them, or I tell a lot of kids in here, it's like, do you want to be an F1 driver, but you're driving a Civic? Like, that's useless. But also, you come in here, you build a Ferrari, and you don't even have a G1 license, you're also useless, right? So that's why it's a marriage of both, right? Makes sense? So like when you're talking about now injury prevention, we know that it's impossible, right? Because sport is so chaotic that a lot of these injuries just happen from unpredictable stuff.
Yeah, shit fucking happens.
But do I believe we can mitigate risk? 100%. I believe the kid that goes through a whole well-rounded training program, who is strong in multiple positions, is mobile, is robust, right? Mm-hmm. Although it's not something you can measure. People are going to come at me, you can't measure robustness. Sure. But actually participating in a well-rounded training program versus a kid who does nothing in the off-season, and that kid gets hurt and my kid doesn't, again, I'm not surprised, right? No. There's no coincidence. Success leaves clues, failure leaves clues. I'll say it for the 100th time. We do 100 of these podcasts. I'll probably say it every week, right? Is injury prevention possible? I don't think so. Of course not. And it's tough because you can do all the right things and kids still get hurt. And people are out there building businesses on lying to people saying, oh, bulletproof your hamstrings, bulletproof your knees. I don't believe in that either. But my kid who trains her ass off and tries to check as many boxes as possible versus the kid who just shows up at training camp and says, all right, time to get in shape. I think that kid is probably more susceptible to an injury than mine, right? I would say that. So that's the tough part.
Yeah.
Prevention, no. Mitigation, I would say there is, right? And I would debate anybody on that.
Yeah, to say something's preventable is like, well, you can't control.
Right.
There's shit that just goes wrong. You know what I mean? Shout out to Donison, by the way, at ISU.
Shout out Donison, man.
Shout out Donison.
One of the OGs, man.
You know what I mean? I still am going to hold my hat in the fact that I fucking hit a dinger off his ass,
Smoked
bro.
it.
Yeah, I
still
fucking
in
smoked.
that IPC 1.0 parking lot somewhere.
Still in the back. Yeah, hey, he's going to have to.
Yeah, he went absolutely yard.
When he gets drafted, I'll be that guy like, hey, man, remember that time I hit a dinger off you? There's witnesses.
You can tell your kids one day, too.
Yeah, I will. And then I'll sign his rookie card. I'll sign his fucking rookie card for him.
But he went absolutely yard.
He'll remember that. He'll remember that.
What the hell I thought I was doing playing back catcher.
He'll have trouble sleeping at night.
Yeah.
But to build on your point about this injury prevention thing, shit happens. In terms of mitigation or risk, mitigating the risk of injury, it's just how can we delay the inevitable, and then it's not a matter of really if, it's when. If you don't want to get hurt, don't play fucking sports.
Yeah, that's reality.
The longer you play in the game, it's bound to happen. So it's not a matter of if, it's when. It's can we delay the inevitable? Can we delay the when further? And then should shit happen, can we reduce the severity?
Right.
It's just simply moving that needle further to the right and down. Can we delay the inevitable and reduce the severity? Great. Like if you fucking sprain your ankle, instead of taking 6 weeks, can we cut it down to 3?
Right.
You know what I mean? Like simple shit like that,
And that's why I loved working with again, I love these shows. Shout out Coach Rayo, because Rayo always said, right? Rayo always said, like,
okay.
I'm not blind to the fact that people are going to get injured. But he was like, man, since we started work with you guys, when girls get injured, the return time is like cut in half, if not more. Like the girls are
Huge.
back so quick because they built some of that robustness. Again, whether or not you can measure, tolerance, whether or not you can measure like a robustness score or something, and maybe it's not that simple. But he was like, not only are girls playing better, getting injured less, but when they get injured, they're coming back much quicker. The total time lost is reduced, right? In the pro sports, especially now, that's they can literally measure. I don't know. You're on an NFL rookie contract. Let's say you're making 50 or 60K a week. You miss 1 week versus 2. Like that's huge money, right? And you can apply that to any pro sport, but that's huge. So not only the potential injury mitigation, I like Stu McMillan will say, sprinting is the best way to vaccinate your hamstrings, right?
Yep.
In appropriate distances and speeds and volumes, right? With appropriate rest periods, appropriate frequency, building up over time, maybe whether that's a short to long model or whatever fits your context. But he'll say like, again, the kid who does no sprinting all off season goes to training camp and blows his hammy off the bone versus the kid who has actually built up a tolerance to that point and doesn't get injured. There's my rebuttal for injury mitigation, right? So there is proper preparation you can do, obviously. Not that my kid will never tweak their hamstring, but they are definitely at a less likely risk.
Yeah, it's just what capacity, what tolerance are they at?
Right.
I mean, and this is it varies for everybody, right? Like it's literally, can we walk that line, right? There's load capacity. We've talked about this in our presentations as well to a lot of teams. It's whether you're a novice, whether you're have a higher training age, or even if you're injured. It's just that your curve just goes further to the left on that spectrum. But to improve or to build capacity, you have to walk that line. If you walk the line, you slowly move that needle further to the right. You cross the line, you get fucking hurt. Same time, if you're not close enough to walk in that line, by default, you go further to the left and you get worse by default. It goes back to what you're talking about speed. If you're not actually training at certain thresholds, and it's not just us trying to tell kids like you have to run as fast as you can. It's like, well, there's a science to it. If you don't hit like up to 90% of your threshold once a week, by default, you're probably getting slower. And unfortunately, we could use the timing gates and say, hey, yeah, like here's your baseline. This is the speeds you have to work at, and then you can kill the set. But if they even dog it, if they fucking dog it during their fucking baseline, like we really can't. It's just one way. Hopefully, we can be less wrong, but really, there's no
narrow the margin of error, right?
Yeah,
and there's also kids who are like, speed is my main goal. I want to sprint every day. And there's also having like the knowledge and the wherewithal to be like, okay, like again, well-intentioned, but that's not going to be good for you either, little Johnny. So what we're actually going to do is only twice a week, right? So it goes both ways. It's educating the kids on, hey, you have to spin that plate at least this frequently. And then there's other kids equally who are very eager, which is awesome. And it's like, take all that energy and just apply it into these 2 speed sessions a week that I'm giving you, and you will get what you want. So it kind of goes both ways. Some kids you got to peel back to, but I would always rather that kid that has to get peeled back versus the kid who I got to.
I'd rather have to fucking pull the pit bull back on the leash than to kick a chihuahua in the fucking ass.
Go eat something.
It's like, goddamn, are you hungry to eat, or you just like, are you starving, or are you just happy to have something to eat? You know what I mean? Like it's So it's crazy. It's so subjective. It's going to go always back to the intent. Like, do they understand the intent? Again, a big part of us can be educating.
Which if they don't, that's our fault. Yeah, it's not their fault that they don't get it. It's our fault because we're the educators, right?
It's huge. We have to educate them. We have to help them get that quote unquote buy-in to say, listen, like what we're trying to do is not fucking make you a power lifter. We're not trying to make you an Olympic lifter. We're not trying to do all that crazy bullshit taboo stuff. It's like we're here to make you better. We want to keep you in the game at higher levels for a longer duration of the time and get you if you want to go pro, you want to go post-secondary, get you fucking paid. It's like these are things that we know that we can control in these 4 walls to make you a little bit better and hopefully make you stand out and keep you in the game maybe a little bit longer for at a higher level. So I think having them understand that capacity threshold, like these are just the things, regardless of how you feel, like this is just the physiology of it. If we don't apply an appropriate stimulus for a certain amount of volume, then it doesn't matter what I say or what you say. It's just the thing is not gonna move forward in your circumstance. It's not personal. It's just 2 + 2 is 4, and you got 3.
Whether you like it or not.
Whether you like it or not, it's not personal.
You're well on your way, but you're not there.
It's just you have to do the thing, right? And again, we can accommodate certain things to an extent, but at some point we have to put rubber on the road and be like, we have to kind of hit this threshold now. Because like you can only postpone to a week. Okay, then 2 becomes 2, and then maybe 3, and you're like, well, fuck, how long are we gonna keep doing the quote unquote rehab-ish or there's fucking mitigating bullshit? It's like at some point you have to fucking train.
I think that's why we mesh so well with Tyler Pierce here in house.
Shout out Tyler.
That's why he's our favorite RMT. That's why we only bring on people on this team that share the vision, that have the same interest in mind and the same vision.
Yeah.
And he tells me, he's like, I tell all my patients, like, the rehab stuff I'm giving you is necessary, but the long-lasting changes you're going to make is in a weight room, hopefully with us or on your own, whatever. But it's awesome because he has served as both a strength coach and an RMT.
He gets it.
So he gets it, right? He is the perfect resource for us to be like, I'm going to get you out of this acute pain and moving better and into these better patterns or whatever it may be. But if you don't proceed out into the weight room, again, whether it's here or wherever, it's like you typed up the nice Microsoft Word document, but you never hit save.
Yeah.
Right. So he's like, those are the people I'm going to see again probably in a month or two because you didn't do the requisite stuff and to solidify some of these changes, right? And build that armor, so to speak. Like we said, it's, people make all these claims about bulletproofing, and that's a little bit too far. But the point is, you can definitely build some robustness, obviously, in the weight room. That's the whole point we're trying to do, right?
Yeah. He again, shout out Tyler. It's the whole point of the healthcare practitioner on, let's say, the quote unquote rehab side of things is to see them less, right? Like, I think he's he understands that too. It's like, I don't want to keep seeing them. I want them to be able to go back to, whether it be just their normal life, their activities they enjoy, if they're an athlete, get back to performance levels again, so they can express skills again. So it drives me fucking insane to hear athletes. And again, maybe there's miscommunication because, again, sometimes athletes misinterpret certain things. So maybe like an AT or a PT, whatever, says something to them, and all of a sudden it's like broken fucking telephone. They relay it to us or something like that. And you're just like, don't come to me saying I can't because.
Right.
That is.
Then we talk to the PT. They're like, well, I didn't say that.
Yeah.
Right. So like I think a lot of times they get a bad rap too because it's like by the time the message gets to us,
broken.
It's very broken, and the kid might be like, my PT told me to shut it down. And the PT was like, no, what I said was maybe don't do these high-intensity plyometrics. And I'm like, yeah, I totally agree.
Yeah. It comes back to what you talked about before. It's collaborations. Like at a certain point, if you're injured, right, your AT or PT, whoever, your healthcare practitioner is taking the lead on this. We're the support staff, again. But they should be helping us work together and be like, hey, here are the things here's like our prognosis and our diagnosis. Here's the things that we feel off limits for X amount of weeks. Everything else should be free reign. Or like, if there's certain things that we are constrained by, give us some parameters so we can work creatively to help them get better. Not just say, you can't do, you hurt your ankle. Okay, well, you can't go to the gym today. You can't train. It's like, well, fuck, hold on now. You still got one leg, two arms, you got air in your lungs, a fucking heartbeat.
Yeah. Don't turn one mistake into two.
Yeah, don't make it bigger than it has to be, right? Let's just, there's an issue. Great. How can we work within the constraints that you currently have? There's always a way to get better.
Right.
You know what I mean? And it drives me crazy that if there are practitioners that are like that, think like that, they're not making, run for the hills. Like, that is not the way, right? And again, it comes back to, there's ownership on the athlete too, though.
Yeah, of course.
There has to be ownership on the athlete too, to be like, hey, it's not an I can't because. That's the end of the line. That's a blank statement that, okay, you already made that's a choice you made. That's a statement piece. You said your thing, then your decision's made up.
Yeah, that's not a comma, that's a period.
Yeah, it's a period. So versus like the athletes that tend to do well, they go, hey, this happened. How can I X, Y, Z? How can I still do something? Great question. Now that's a working point. We can collaborate. Let's work together to find something that can still move the needle forward in some realm.
Right.
Versus just that whole, I can't, I sprained my fucking pinky, therefore I didn't show up to the gym today, or I didn't show up to practice. You're just like, you'd be fucking kidding me.
Yeah, and that's the thing with Ty. Again, the way I talk to him and kind of understanding the method to his madness, and he's like, I want to be able to see. It's also tough because sometimes people only go see these practitioners once it's too late as a reactive. So he's like, I want to treat the same person all year long, but most of those treatments should be proactive, should be maintenance, should be proactive, should not just be reactive. If I see the same person all year and it's always that reactive treatment, it's like you're not doing your homework.
No.
Right? He's like, I should keep seeing that person, but most of those things should be on the maintenance phase. It should be on a proactive before you get injured type thing, right? Or not even about injury, but just, you get the massage treatment, now you can perform optimally. But if I see that person 12 months a year and it's always because they're injured, it's always reactive, it's always rehabilitative, that's obviously a pattern that just can't continue, right?
Yeah. Parallel to us, it's kind of like they come to us in season, okay, now I'm ready to go. It's like, well, fuck, you pissed away 16 weeks of doing shit. And now you want to do the things in season. You're like, there are, again, like I know a lot of sports train all year round. It's just it's just a shift on the spectrum, like a dimmer dial. Like, okay, what do we prioritize a little more? Where can we tend to focus more efforts versus less efforts? Like, our kids that come back from college or university in the summer, it's like they're still probably, if it's basketball, volleyball, hockey, they're still probably getting their reps in their sport once a week or twice a week. It's not to the same extent as in season. We're probably practicing 4, 5, 6 days a week.
Right. But I never met a hockey guy in the summer who I had to say, you probably don't skate, eh?
Yeah.
Like those guys are into it. They don't need to be told.
No, they know.
Football guys, they love getting the extra work in. Like volleyball, they're into it. So thankfully, I mean, we're obviously surrounded by highly motivated people all the time as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, not too often do we have to tell these kids like, when's the last time you threw a ball? You should probably get out and do that, eh? Like,
yeah, when's the last time you did your thing?
They're into it.
I do that.
Yeah. They're into it.
I still do that thing. Am I getting paid to do that thing? Yeah, I do. I get paid to do the thing.
Right.
Shit. So it's always it's funny. They always come back. It's always like, okay, now I'm ready. I'm like, fuck, man, we're 16 weeks shy of the party, and you're just like, you got 5 practices a week. You can only train once or twice a week. You're just like, now you're ready. Don't get me wrong. You'll probably still see something. It's just
better than nothing.
Better than nothing.
Yeah.
It's just gonna be a hard growing pain process. It's like you're gonna hurt a little bit, and you're probably gonna feel like shit for a few weeks now because you have this whole, not just one thing getting at you. You're in season. You got 5 practices coming at you. Now you gotta train. Now you gotta do school at the same time.
School, yeah.
It's like you have when you went from like having 1 or 2 major stressors over like your off season to like 7, and all of a sudden you're like, now is the time for me to get better. You're like,
let me add an 8th.
You're like, fuck, like this is.
Well, then the problem is like I mentioned before, is that we don't have a baseline of volume established, so we don't know what high volume is. We don't know what high or low volume is, or frequency. Even us, as we continually try to learn and sharpen our own acts, how many training books do we read and it's like high volume, low volume, and there's no context. It's like useless.
Yep.
Right?
It's relative.
Strength coaches can't. I mean, I'm sure we can on the extreme end of things. I'm sure we can all agree on what's high and low volume, but you see, you know, German volume training 10 by 10, that's high volume. Yeah, no shit, right?
Yeah.
Work up to 1 heavy single, that's low volume. But everything in between there, it's kind of muddy because all these different coaches will have different explanations or definitions of what high and low volume are. Mm-hmm. So that comes back to my point before. We need to have an off-season period where we establish, because every athlete is an experiment of n=1, what is high or low volume for you? Mm-hmm. Because then we can taper from that in the season. If you come to us during training camp or week 1 of the season, and now we have to try to establish what the hell your volume is and pull it out of thin air, we have no idea where to even start, right? Yeah. So, again, if a kid's doing their 5x5 squats in the summer, that's 25 reps, okay. Now they do 4x3 in season, that's low volume. Why? Because they've cut their normal volume in half.
Yep.
If I don't know what the hell their normal volume is, now I'm just grasping at straws in season, throwing things at the wall, hoping they stick. Maybe they will, maybe they won't, right? So now I'm wasting time experimenting in season, like you kind of alluded to, and then maybe now they go to practice, they perform suboptimally because now they're sore. Coach is, send us a text, what's going on with so-and-so? I don't blame them. Him or her is like, my practice is the most important thing. Yes, it is. And I'm sorry that I did some soreness to your kid here, but it's because they waited too long, and now we're trying to play catch-up. If we can establish for them appropriate volumes, intensities, frequencies in the off-season, get into that functional overreaching a little bit, not overtraining, but, like you said, ride the thin line, over top.
Yeah, stretching it.
Then we know where to go to say, hey, here's the minimum, people love this, minimum effective dose. Now we can really establish what the minimum effective dose is for that person, so that we can go in season and have an appropriate volume for them, right? When I was training with Tyson, I've told you these stories with Tyson, doing the training with, inspired by what Coach Clance was doing, snatch, clean, squat, 4 times a week, right? Amongst these other lifts too. Now I go in season, I do those things twice a week each. It feels like a vacation.
Yeah,
it's a ham sandwich, man. It's easy, right?
Walking on it.
There's some dark days training. We train our ass off, right? Strongest I've ever been. It worked. It was awesome. But my point is, it was very easy to understand now when we go into season what is low volume, right? If somebody was like a once a week squatter in the off season before, now you come in season, what do you do now? Damn. Maybe you cut the volume down, right? But you can't go any less than 1 day a week. So what do? You got nowhere to go. Right? So that's kind of my point. Like, if you have not put the work in the off season, you don't know where the hell you're going now in season.
Yeah.
Right? I'm kind of repeating myself, but that's the whole point. Like, the off season is for training, yes, for developing, but also establishing norms. Your norm is this. I can now peel you back to this. My goal when I train these kids, especially if I'm going to send them off to university to play something, or obviously the pros, is that collegiate strength coach's job or that pro guy's job or girl's job is easy, because my kid has such a high work capacity and movement ability. 2 things. That new coach now does not have to teach him how to squat. all these basic patterns, how to hinge, how to press, whatever.
Yeah, it makes his job or her job
I want to make
easier.
their job easier.
Yeah,
They
it's
send
their
it back to
fucking
me in the
job
summer. My job's easier. It's collaborative. It's not us versus them. It's we're on the same page. Let me build this kid's work capacity up so effing high that no matter what you throw at them, they're gonna be. It's gonna feel like a deload, right? And they're gonna be such a good mover that you don't have to teach them anything. Okay, now your job is gonna be easy. That's my main goal. If my kids can move well, have a high work capacity, you're gonna be around them for a bigger portion of the year than I am.
Oh, yeah.
Right? So you're gonna be, and that's fine, right? So and you're gonna be, they're in that environment, they're with the team, they're gonna get some hard training going. If I send that person away and they can't even do a normal pattern, they can't squat, they can't hinge, can't stand on one leg, can't sprint, can't jump, can't press, can't pull, it's like I've done them a disservice. Now I'm making that guy or that girl's job harder.
Yeah.
Instead, let me teach them how to be a good mover, have a good work capacity. No matter what you throw at them, it's going to be easy relatively to what we were doing, and your job is going to be you're going to be able to optimize that time now, right? Because they built up such a high tolerance.
Yeah. No, you fucking hit the nail. That was fucking awesome. You hit the nail right in the fucking head. N equals 1 off season. That is, you nailed it. Now we have.
That's why kids come in here to get a personalized program. This is not some whiteboard bullshit.
Yeah,
I'm going to throw it up and say, you're the football player, so you're going to do this. No, you're going to get assessed. You're going to get a personalized program, and you're going to get guided through it by expert coaches because that's what you deserve. And like I said, when you go away to the next level, their job is going to be easier. I collaborate with these guys all the time. I know you do as well, and Aiden does as well. And it's always positive. It's always collaborative because we don't have this us versus them. We're on the same team.
Yeah, fucking ego.
They understand that. We understand that. It's always good. But I think in this industry, you see a lot of private guys or girls versus it's like versus. What do you mean versus? I'm like, we're on the same team, right? All we want is the best for the athlete. If that's what I really want and that's what you, collegiate coach or pro coach, really want, we should have nothing but happy days, right? Good conversations. We're all on the same page.
Yeah. Help us help them.
Right.
Right, and vice versa.
I can shout out a whole list of coaches who I'm so fortunate and thankful to be able to collaborate with because I honestly I've had nothing but good conversations. What the hell is the word I'm looking for? Good conversation interactions.
Interactions.
That wasn't even a big word. Good interactions. That's a CTE coming out. Good interactions with these coaches, but you see it online. You see it on Instagram. Us versus them. I'm like, it's unbelievable.
No, it's completely it's again, we'll control you control and run for walls. It's always flattering too. Like we hear our kids will text us when they go back to school in the fall or whatever. They'll say, "Oh, I'm a PR the best over here. Like I'm the best in my class over here, or I hit this many on this." It's so that's the good shit. That's the fun stuff. Where they text you, or even the coaches will say, "Hey, they fucking did awesome." Like you make their job.
"Hey, coach, let me know what else I can do for you."
Yeah, that's
it's
right.
Not like, "Yeah, you're damn right, I did that shit." It's not like that.
No, it's like, "Hey, what else can I help you with? Like, what else you need for me to help you help them?"
Right.
Like that's the statement right there.
100%. And that's where a lot of this data tracking helps. I could say, "Hey,
absolutely.
Do you want to see their jumps?
Yeah.
Do you want to see a summer's worth of jumps, sprints,
yeah, here's where we're at.
Like, you know what I mean? I can give you some context that.
Yeah.
Whatever, you know.
Yeah. Here's we kind of left off. Like, how can we help you get to where you want them to get to? That's our big thing. So I'm like, hey, where do you want them by the fall?
Right.
That's the best part. Is like when coaches at the university or pros are collaborative. Like, hey, I just need them to get here. Do what you gotta do to get them here.
Yeah.
Done. No fucking problem. Here, we're gonna hand them off to you. They're ready to go. Right. They're turnkey ready. They're turnkey ready. Right. It's not like you said. It's not us versus them bullshit. It's collaborative in nature. And then it's most rewarding when they actually hit those. It's like a breath of fresh air. When a coach, like it's nice to have a kid come in who's turnkey ready. You're like, holy fuck, good. I can just go right into because they're probably gonna get them right in the start of the season too, right? Like they come back from their off season. Now they're turnkey ready for instance. Like, okay, great. I don't have to go back to this shit and waste 4, 6, 8 weeks, piss away to catch them up to speed. And then by that point, you're like, oh fuck, now what? It's just refreshing. It's like a breath of like, oh, like a stress off your shoulders.
Right.
It could be that.
And I hope it's a stress off their shoulders too.
Hopefully.
Like private sector, collegiate sector, pro, we all have our own individual challenges.
Yep.
And just realities of the job. Like if I send a kid away to play OUA football, like that coach is not going to write 90 individual programs. I don't blame them. I mean, it's impossible. Right? They might take them through a battery of tests and be able to bucket, whether it's by position, whether it's by needs, and they're going to do their best to individualize, but they obviously still can't write 90 different programs for 90 different guys, right? So they have constraints. They have constraints that we don't have to deal with here, right? Vice versa, we might have constraints that they don't have to deal with, right? So it's like, how can I, with the time I have available, give that athlete the best experience possible, that when they get back to you, that's an easy piece of Play-Doh. You can just mold and do with what you need to do with, right?
Yeah.
If I send a kid away and they know what I mean, like coach is like, oh yeah, wow, they squat 400 pounds, they bench 300 pounds. Yeah, cool, that's great. They hit these metrics. But like I said, if I have kids that can move well, have a good work capacity, ironically, they're going to hit those crazy numbers anyway, but also by default. But you're not going to have to teach them how to, there's a lot of guys I've maybe seen or whatever you see that's like, man, this guy came in, he could bench a house, but he can't touch his toes. He can't bend. That's a big thing in football, every sport, I'm sure. But, oh, this guy can't, yeah, man, he's strong, but he can't bend, right? I'm like, the guys that I have that can bend, they can also lift really heavy. They can also jump high, run fast, and the work capacity is off the charts, right? And it's not a coincidence. But if I can make that coach's life easier, they send it back to me with the same thing. That's his collaboration, right? You got into this field because you want to help people, right? That's the most thing. We interview people, interns, potential employees. Why do you want to do this job? I want to help people. Okay, well, if you really mean it, then you're going to put your ego aside and you're going to do what you can to help that person, right? And then you hope, like I said, you send them away. I've had nothing but good interactions, experiences. They have the same intentions and feelings. They send you back with the same intention, right?
It could be that fucking simple. It's
right.
With the ego side, it's not about us. It's about
that's the reality. It's not about us.
It's about
right.
the athlete. And if everyone just worked together that way,
right?
Fuck, this industry would just be so much better. I think everyone's performance would elevate. We can go on for hours on this, but we're closing on time, so we'll leave it there. I'm sure we'll have way more to fucking talk about this, but we'll save that for another day. As always, thank you all for tuning in to the Performance Matters podcast. Make sure you subscribe to us on Spotify and YouTube, and we will see you next time.
Peace.